Welcome to the Stop Down Photography Podcast, episode 93. I'm Scott Davenport. In today's podcast, let's take a look back at our year of photography and a look to what lies ahead in 2022. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad to be back with you for another chat about photography, this shared passion of ours. And in today's episode, let's take one more step on our never-ending journey of photography. As visual artists, we are always pushing forward, and the end of the year is a natural point to reflect on your photography. Take a moment and look at the past year. What went well, what can be improved, and what lies ahead. In today's episode, I share thoughts about 2021 and some of the patterns I've noticed in my photography, and talk about the challenges 2022 is going to present. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please share it with a friend on social media with your camera club. And if you can, please leave a rating for the podcast. Fresh ratings help other photographers find out about the show. iPhone or Mac OS users can rate directly in the podcast's app. You can also leave a rating via the web at podchaser.com. Links in the show notes. The end of the year is always a natural point for reflection. How was the past year? What's in store for the year ahead? Many of us have a little downtime in late December, and for our photography, it's an opportune time to spend an hour or so with your image library, review your photos, and if you set photo goals for the year, measure how you did, and set some goals for the coming year. If you've not done this before, reviewing your library, looking for trends, identifying photo goals, have a listen to episode 51. In that episode, I talk about how to leverage your photo library and the metadata in your images to check on your progress and to identify photo goals for the next segment of your photography. And a goal can be a personal thing. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be massive. It could be just to continue a good habit you've developed. Or it could be to explore a new aspect of photography or improve on fundamentals like composition or having a clear story in the frame. I have a link in the show notes to episode 51 so you can have a listen, and feel free to jump over to that podcast now. I'll be here when you get back. If you did set photo goals for 2021, it's time to take a look at your images for the past year and measure them against your goals. Did you hit them all? Some of them? Maybe there are partial successes, or phrased another way, still room for improvement. Or maybe there was a pivot point in your photography, and your goals will shift and change for the coming year. This is why we take this time to review our work. If we don't measure things, we can't improve things, we can't make course corrections. I do wholeheartedly encourage you to take a moment and review your work. On my side, I've done a review of my photography for 2021 and measured it against the goals I set at the beginning of the year. How did I do? How did I fare? Well, overall, pretty good. I set 3 photo goals for the year. Number 1, get out of the wide-angle trap. Number 2, capture more photo essays. And number 3, return to black and white imagery. And I did well on 2 out of the 3. I had made good improvement on capturing more photo essays. So with each of my field outings, I'm getting better at thinking beyond that singular hero photo and capturing some surrounding work where the body of the images tells a fuller story of that particular location. I also reconnected with black and white imagery, incorporating more of that into my work and into these photo essays. However, I am still entrenched in wide-angle photography, and this goal, I need to think about this one. Exploring longer focal lengths has been on my list as an area to improve for a long time, probably 5 years going now. And, maybe I just see the world at a wide angle, or I don't normally photograph wildlife, so I don't have the long lens. Or maybe it's because I photograph on the coast often and I'm looking for that foreground anchor for a wide-angle shot. Maybe if I photographed in the desert or the mountains or somewhere else, would I use a longer lens more often? So maybe I shouldn't worry about consciously pushing to get those long lens photos, because overall, I am pleased with the photos I'm creating. I produced good work in 2021, so I'm not sure on this one. But what I have noticed after reviewing my library, when I turn my attention to the future, looking into 2022, the focal length question is not front and center. In fact, I have just one goal for the coming year: shoot more. I had an instinct about my photography habits and patterns for 2021, and so I put this to the test. I looked at my photo library in a way I hadn't before. I looked at the number of unique photo outings I made over the years. Lightroom's filtering tools make this pretty easy to measure. I have a single catalog with all of my photos in it, and they are all beneath a top-level folder called Originals, which, as I say that out loud, is not a very original name. But I can select that folder and open the library filter with 3 columns, one for year, one for month, one for day. I choose 2021 as the year. The next column over shows me the months. Choose a month. The next column over shows the days of that month where I made photos. And what's nice is only the days that have photos are shown, along with a count of the total number of days in that month. So I can click through each month and with a small amount of mental math, come up with a number of days that I took a photo. And I will take a little bit of a look where sometimes on a given day I have one photo because I was doing a test shot in the studio or taking a photo of a product. So I can weed those out pretty quickly. But it's a few minutes and I have a number of the unique photo outings I made for a year. So what are the stats? In 2021, I went out with my camera a total of just 29 days. And 9 of those days, I was hosting workshops in Oregon. So they kind of don't count toward personal photography growth. 29 minus 9, 20 days out of a year of 365 days. 20 days is what I worked on for personal photography. And that is worse than 2020. In 2020, I went out 26 days. The pandemic has definitely taken a toll on my photography habits. I am working in the field less, and the trend is going in the wrong direction. I got curious and I looked at 2019. I had 64 outings, purposeful location visits to work on landscape photography. For those of you that like statistics, comparing 2019 to 2020, my outings with the camera in 2020 dropped 60%. And this past year in 2021 have dropped another 20%. Yeah, not the trend I want to have. I'm not getting out with the camera enough, and I want that to change in 2022. And I already know that's going to be a challenge. What lies ahead with 2022 is already shaping up to be another challenging year, at least here in the United States. Pandemic challenges will continue. The Omicron variant is already threatening the gains we made over the past year for freer travel and more interaction with live people in beautiful places and settings. Our plans have to be more fluid. I've had to pivot my photo plans several times because the rules of engagement keep changing. Outside forces driven by the pandemic trickle down and affect our plans. Even supply chain problems is another one. That's really begun to show itself in the last few months, and I think it's going to continue into next year. Microchip shortages affect the camera industry. So do container ships stuck in ports. If you've been waiting on a piece of gear, you know what I'm talking about. And the costs in general for everything is going up. And that trickles to our photography, both directly and indirectly. Fortunately, any modern camera, this last 7 years or so, they can do a whole lot and make great images. So can our smartphones. So a challenging year ahead doesn't mean a hopeless year. Remember back to the early days of the pandemic, March, April of 2020, and the world just seemed to stop. That's not the case anymore. We may not be back to pre-pandemic days that I think we're all yearning for, but we're not closed off from the world. And we've also learned to interact remotely using tools like Zoom that keeps the flame of photography lit. So I have optimism for 2022, insofar as I don't think there will be that full-on press pause for photography. The lessons we learned in 2020 and 2021, the adaptations we've made to keep pressing forward with our photography despite these challenges, they're going to serve us well going into the new year. Some studio news for you, and this is more on a personal note. I have some additional challenges for my photography in 2022. Some personal events outside of photography that are unfolding mean I will have less time to dedicate to photography. Now, these events are not life-threatening, thankfully, yet they are things that require my focused attention and will keep me well tethered to San Diego and well tethered to home, really. So I know the time I will have to dedicate to photography will diminish. So yes, that is at odds with my goal of photographing more, getting out with my camera more. But I'm not changing the goal. The goal needs to be that desired outcome, but I will try to measure in quality over quantity, find some balance there. I'm going to keep the goal the way I've set the goal. Also, with less time to dedicate to photographic endeavors, there are ripple effects. I had several workshops planned for 2022 that will be impacted. I plan to host 3, potentially 4 workshops in 2022, and that's dropping to just 1. I expect to have that all sorted by January, but that's a big drop from 3 to 4 down to 1 and only 1. My content creation is also going to reduce across the board. For the past couple of years, my cadence has been pretty predictable. 3 videos a week to YouTube, a weekly podcast, occasional misses on that pace, but otherwise predictable. In 2022, my content will be less predictable. Now, I'm not quitting the podcast or halting YouTube work. I fully intend to continue to pursue photography, make images, and share those experiences on this podcast and in YouTube videos. However, I'm less certain about the pace. I'm honestly not sure how this will play out. Maybe I'll settle into a more predictable but slower pace, like fewer videos, fewer podcasts per month. Or new podcasts and videos might come in bursts. I'll be learning this as I go along. But for us right here, this audience on Stop Down Podcast, I do enjoy making these episodes. I fully intend to continue, because those of you I've spoken with, both in person and through email, you've made it clear that you enjoy this type of podcast. It's not a rehash of photo news or a get this gear and you'll be great type of podcast. It's about the artistic journey as a photographer, as a visual artist. And I do intend to continue to be in your ears and part of your photo journey. So I do hope you'll remain subscribed to the feed, but just know that if a week or 2 goes by and there's not a new episode, I haven't abandoned ship. I'm likely occupied elsewhere. Thanks to everyone that supports the show through comments, reviews, shares. Those are just a few of the ways you can support the podcast. If you'd like to learn more about other ways to support the show, many of which are zero cost, links are in the show notes, or you can click the Support the Show button on any page of stopdownpodcast.com and list a whole ton of different ways you can support the podcast. Of course, if you wish to support the show financially, you can also make a donation. That's going to wrap us up for 2021. I cannot believe another year has gone by. I hope to be back with you sometime in January. And until then, I wish you and yours a very happy and healthy start to 2022. Until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.